The crystal chandelier in Victor Romano's study cast fractured light across the mahogany desk where two men sat in silence, the kind of silence that precedes life-altering decisions. Isabella Romano had always loved that chandelier. Her mother had chosen it years ago, back when their home still felt warm, back when her father's hands didn't shake when he poured his evening scotch. But tonight, as Isabella stood in the doorway clutching her gallery catalog, she understood that some beautiful things exist only to illuminate ugly truths. Victor's voice cracked when he finally spoke. "Isabella, please come in and close the door." The stranger didn't turn immediately. He remained perfectly still, his broad shoulders encased in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than the art pieces Isabella had spent all evening discussing with potential buyers. When he did face her, she found herself meeting eyes so dark they seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. This was not a man accustomed to hearing the word no. "This is Dante Moretti," her father said, and Isabella's breath caught. Everyone in their world knew that name. The Moretti family controlled half the city's infrastructure, both legal and otherwise. They were ghosts in expensive suits, whispered about, but never directly confronted. "He has a proposition that concerns you directly." Isabella remained standing, her fingers tightening around the catalog. "I can't imagine what business a man like Mr. Moretti would have with me." Dante stood then, his movement fluid despite his imposing frame. "Your father owes a substantial debt to some very impatient people. People who don't accept payment plans or negotiate terms. They've given him 1 week to produce $3 million or forfeit his life." His voice carried no emotion, simply stated facts. "I've offered to clear his debt entirely." "How generous," Isabella said, her tone sharp enough to cut. "And what does my father's gambling problem have to do with me?" "Everything, I'm afraid." Dante moved to the window, his hands clasped behind his back. "My late father's will contains a peculiar clause. To maintain control of the Moretti estate and business holdings, I must be married within 6 months of his death. That deadline is in 3 weeks." The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Isabella looked at her father, who couldn't meet her eyes. "You're selling me." "It's not like that," Victor pleaded, rising from his chair. "Isabella, they were going to kill me. And once I was gone, they would have come for you anyway, for whatever assets they could strip from our name. This way, at least you're protected. The Moretti name shields you from everything, except from being bartered like livestock." Isabella's voice remained steady, though her heart hammered against her ribs. She turned to Dante. "And you? You could marry anyone. Why agree to this medieval arrangement?" For the first time, something flickered across Dante's face. "Because anyone I chose freely would become a target. My enemies would see love as weakness, a vulnerability to exploit. An arranged marriage, a business transaction, carries no such risk. You'd be my wife in name and public appearance. Nothing more would be required of you." How remarkably cold. Cold keeps people alive in my world. Isabella walked to her father's desk and sat in his chair, a small act of defiance that didn't go unnoticed by either man. She needed to think, to find an angle, an escape route from this trap that had sprung shut around her. But every path led to the same conclusion. Her father would die, she would be left vulnerable, and the predators would circle regardless of her choice. "What exactly are the terms?" she asked Dante. He returned to his seat, pulling a folder from his jacket. "We marry in 3 weeks. You'll live in my estate, but have your own wing. We'll attend social functions together as needed. You'll have access to accounts for personal expenses and can continue your work at the gallery. In public, we present as a united couple. In private, we maintain separate lives." "For how long?" "The will requires marriage but doesn't specify duration. After 1 year, if you wish to divorce, I'll arrange it quietly. You'll receive a settlement that ensures your financial independence for life." Isabella studied him. Dante Moretti had a reputation for brutality in business, for ending disputes with finality. Yet he sat before her offering terms like a lawyer, not a criminal. There had to be something more, some hidden cost she wasn't seeing. "Your cousin Leo," she said, remembering the gossip she'd heard at gallery events. "He wants your position." Dante's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Leo believes that power should flow to the most ruthless, regardless of tradition or my father's wishes. He's convinced several family members that I'm too soft, too invested in legitimizing our operations. A marriage proves stability. It shows I'm committed to legacy, to building something that lasts beyond quarterly profits and body counts. So I'm a political pawn. Yes. His honesty was almost refreshing, but a protected one. My word means something, Miss Romano. While you bear my name, no one touches you. Not Leo, not his associates, not anyone. Isabella opened the folder, scanning the contract within. It was thorough, professional, almost like a business merger agreement. Separate finances, clear boundaries, exit clauses. On paper, it looked reasonable. In reality, she was reading the terms of her own gilded cage. I need time to think, she said. You have until tomorrow evening, Dante replied, standing. After that, I'll need to pursue other options, and your father's creditors won't wait longer than the week they've already granted. He moved toward the door, then paused, pulling a worn book from his jacket pocket. He'd been holding it the entire time, she realized. I found this in a bookshop today. First edition Marcus Aurelius, Meditations. The proprietor mentioned you'd been searching for a clean copy for months. Isabella took the book, startled. The leather was soft under her fingers, the pages gilt-edged and pristine. How did you? I make it my business to know the people I deal with. Dante's expression softened almost imperceptibly. You curated that exhibition on Stoic philosophy last spring. I attended the opening lecture. Your analysis of Aurelius's view on acceptance versus resignation was compelling. He'd been there. In her world, listening to her speak about ideas and art and philosophy, the thought unsettled her more than anything else that evening. At the doorway, Dante turned back one final time. He looked at her father, then at her, and when he spoke, his voice dropped to something almost gentle. I know you didn't choose this, Isabella. Neither did I. But I give you my word, no one will ever hurt you under my protection. Not even me. Then he was gone, leaving only the faint scent of sandalwood and the weight of an impossible decision. Isabella sat in silence with her father for a long moment. Finally, Victor spoke, his voice broken. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Bella. I tried everything else. I sold the cars, the vacation house, your mother's jewelry. Nothing was enough. You sold mother's jewelry? The betrayal of that struck deeper than the arranged marriage somehow. To buy myself more time. It only made things worse. He poured himself another scotch with shaking hands. If you say no, I understand. I'll face what's coming. Maybe I deserve it. Isabella looked at the book in her hands, then at the father who'd raised her, flawed and broken as he was. She thought about the gallery she loved, the life she'd built, the future she'd imagined. All of it felt like sand slipping through her fingers. But she also thought about Dante's eyes when he spoke of protection, the way he'd noticed her work, remembered her words. There were worse fates than marrying a man who read philosophy and kept his promises. I'll do it, she whispered. The wedding was set for 3 weeks from that night. The Cathedral of St. Michael had witnessed countless Moretti family events over the decades, but never had its stone walls contained such a peculiar mixture of legitimate society and criminal aristocracy. Isabella stood in the bride's room, staring at her reflection in an antique mirror while Lucia fussed with the cathedral-length veil that cascaded down her back like a waterfall of imported silk. You could still run, Lucia whispered, though they both knew it was an empty suggestion. I have my car out back. We could be in another state by nightfall. Isabella managed a weak smile. And then what? My father dies. You become an accomplice to fleeing a Moretti arrangement, and I spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder. She smoothed the ivory lace of her gown, a vintage Valentino that Dante had somehow acquired in her exact measurements. At least this way, everyone gets something. Father lives. I get protection and a very generous post-nuptial agreement. Dante secures his inheritance. And what do you lose? Everything, Isabella thought. My freedom, my dreams, my chance at choosing my own path. But aloud, she said, nothing I wasn't going to sacrifice eventually anyway. This just happens faster and with better financial terms. The ceremony passed in a blur of traditional vows and meaningful glances from guests trying to decipher what kind of arrangement this truly was. Dante stood at the altar looking devastating in a Tom Ford tuxedo, his expression unreadable as Isabella walked down the aisle on her father's trembling arm. When they exchanged rings, his hands were steady, warm. When he lifted her veil to kiss her, he hesitated for just a moment, his dark eyes searching hers for something she couldn't name. Then his lips brushed hers, soft and brief, and it was done. The reception at the Moretti estate revealed the family's wealth in overwhelming detail. Marble columns, Baroque artwork, gardens that could have belonged to Versailles. Isabella moved through it all like a ghost at her own funeral, smiling for photographs, accepting congratulations from people who knew exactly what this marriage really meant. That's when she first truly noticed Leo Moretti. He approached during the dinner, his smile too wide, too familiar. Where Dante was controlled intensity, Leo was chaotic energy barely contained in an expensive suit. "The beautiful bride," he said, taking her hand and kissing it in a gesture that lasted a moment too long. "Welcome to the family. Though I wonder how long you'll grace us with your presence." "I'm sorry." Isabella withdrew her hand. "Oh, forgive me. Has Dante not mentioned Gabriella?" Leo's eyes glittered with malicious delight. His previous fiancée. Tragic story, really. She lasted all of 6 months before someone put 3 bullets in her outside a restaurant in the theater district. They never did find who ordered the hit. Isabella's blood ran cold. Dante had mentioned needing a marriage arrangement, but had never spoken of a murdered fiancé. Before she could respond, Dante appeared at her side, his hand settling possessively on her waist. "Leo, I believe your mother was looking for you," Dante said, his voice carrying a warning. "Of course, cousin. Just getting acquainted with family." Leo smiled at Isabella one more time. "Do be careful. This world eats up innocent things." When Leo departed, Isabella turned to her new husband. "Is it true? About Gabriella?" Dante's jaw tightened. "We need to talk. But not here." He led her through the crowded ballroom, up a grand staircase, and into a private study lined with books. Only when the door closed did he speak. "Gabriella Russo and I were engaged 2 years ago. It was a love match, not an arrangement." His voice was flat, controlled. "She knew what I was but thought love would protect her. I thought I could keep her safe. We were both wrong. A rival family, the Castellanos, wanted to send a message about territorial disputes. They killed her to hurt me. And you think by keeping me at a distance, by making this purely business, you'll protect me better?" "Yes." Dante poured himself a drink, didn't offer her one. "Emotion is a weakness in my world. Leo knows this. That's why he told you about Gabriella. He wants to plant fear, make you doubt, create cracks he can exploit." Isabella moved closer, studying this man she'd married hours ago. "And what if I'm not interested in being kept at a safe distance? What if I want to understand this world I've been thrust into?" "Then you're a fool." But there was no heat in his words. "Go back to the reception. Smile. Play the role. That's all I need from you." She should have left then, should have accepted the boundaries he was drawing. But something in his eyes, a flash of old pain, made her stay. "Tell me about her." About Gabriella. And surprisingly, he did. For the next hour, Dante spoke of a woman who loved opera and collected rare butterflies, who had seen good in him that he wasn't sure existed. He spoke of the night she died, how he'd been in a meeting when the call came, how he'd held her in the street while sirens wailed and rain washed her blood into the gutter. He spoke of the revenge he'd taken, swift and absolute, and how it had felt hollow even as his enemies burned. "I won't make that mistake again," he finished. "I won't care, and therefore I won't lose." Isabella sat in silence, processing this glimpse of the man behind the reputation. "Finally," she said, "that's a very lonely way to live. Loneliness doesn't get you killed." The days that followed established a strange rhythm. Isabella occupied the east wing of the estate, Dante the west. They met for breakfast, discussing neutral topics like the weather and current events. They attended social functions together, playing their parts perfectly. To the outside world, they were a sophisticated couple navigating the early days of marriage. But in private, they orbited each other like distant planets, maintaining careful distance. Isabella threw herself into her work at the gallery, curating a new exhibition on Renaissance portraiture. She found Dante had quietly arranged for security upgrades to the building and had Marco, his right-hand man, doing regular perimeter checks. When she confronted him about it, he simply said, "You're my wife. You will be protected." This isn't negotiable. It was during late nights that the walls began to crack. Isabella suffered from insomnia and often painted in the estate's garden studio that Dante had mentioned she could use. She didn't expect to find him there one dawn, reading in a chair she'd pulled in earlier, his jacket discarded, shirt sleeves rolled up. "I didn't mean to intrude," he said, standing. "I saw the light and thought security had left something on." Isabella set down her brush. "You're not intruding. It's your house. It's our house. The agreement specifies equal access to all common areas." He moved closer to her canvas, studying the abstract piece she'd been working on. "This is extraordinary. The way you've layered the colors. It's like watching emotion evolve." They began talking then, really talking. About art and philosophy, about the books they loved and the places they wished they could visit. Dante revealed he'd wanted to be a professor once, before his father's heart attack had thrust him into leadership. Isabella admitted she'd dreamed of opening her own gallery in Paris before debt had anchored her family to the city. These dawn conversations became ritual, coffee and comfortable silence, occasionally broken by shared observations about the world. Isabella learned that Dante donated anonymously to 3 children's hospitals and funded art programs in underprivileged schools. He learned that she'd been caring for her father's deteriorating mental state for years, long before the gambling debt had spiraled out of control. 6 weeks into their marriage, everything changed. Isabella was leaving a gallery showing of emerging artists when a black van pulled alongside the curb. 2 men emerged, moving with clear intent. She ran, her heels making it difficult, her phone already dialing Dante's number. She'd made it half a block when they caught her, a hand over her mouth, arms dragging her toward the vehicle. Then gunfire cracked through the air, and her captors dropped. Dante appeared like an avenging angel, his weapon still drawn, his face transformed into something primal and terrifying. Marco and 3 other men secured the area while Dante gathered Isabella into his arms. "Are you hurt? Did they touch you? Isabella, answer me." His hands were shaking as he checked her for injuries, and she realized this was fear. Real, genuine fear. I'm okay, Dante." He held her then, right there on the street with his men watching and sirens approaching. Held her like she might disappear if he let go. "I can't," he whispered into her hair. "I can't lose someone else. I thought I could keep my distance, thought it would keep you safe, but all it did was make me blind to the threats." Isabella pulled back to look at him. "Who were they?" "Leo's men. Marco's been tracking his movements. He's making a play for control, and taking you was supposed to force my hand." That night, Dante didn't return to his wing. He stayed with Isabella, sitting in a chair by her bed, refusing to sleep until she did. And when she woke from nightmares of hands dragging her into darkness, he was there, holding her, murmuring promises that he would end this threat. "I'm falling for you," Isabella confessed in the quiet darkness. "I've been trying not to, but I am." Dante's arms tightened around her. "I've already fallen. That's what terrifies me most." They kissed then, not the chaste brush of their wedding ceremony, but something deep and desperate and real. An acknowledgement that their arrangement had evolved into something neither had planned for, something that made them both vulnerable in ways they couldn't afford. But as dawn broke and reality returned, they both knew the same truth. Love in Dante's world was a declaration of war. The morning after the attempted kidnapping, Isabella woke to find Dante already gone, but a note rested on the pillow beside her in his precise handwriting. "Marco will stay with you today. Don't argue. We need to talk tonight about what comes next." What came next arrived faster than either of them anticipated. Isabella insisted on going to work despite Marco's protests, refusing to hide in the estate like a prisoner. She was organizing the new Renaissance exhibition when her assistant, Thomas, mentioned that a Mr. Leo Moretti had called requesting a private viewing for a potential major acquisition. "Tell him I'm unavailable," Isabella said immediately. But Leo had never been one to accept rejection. He appeared at the gallery an hour later, flanked by 2 men who were clearly not art enthusiasts. Marco tensed, his hand moving toward his concealed weapon, but Isabella shook her head. They were in public, surrounded by civilians. Whatever Leo wanted, he wouldn't risk exposure here. "Mrs. Moretti," Leo said, spreading his arms in false warmth. "How lovely to see you looking so well after last night's unfortunate incident. What do you want, Leo? To make you an offer. A way out of this mess." He gestured to a Caravaggio reproduction on the wall. "My cousin is a sentimental fool, just like his father. He thinks he can transform our family business into something respectable, legitimate. But empires aren't built on corporate mergers and philanthropic gestures. They're built on fear, on power, on the willingness to do what others won't. Isabella crossed her arms. And you think you're that person? I know I am. Dante's weakness is that he's grown to care about you. That makes both of you liabilities. Leo moved closer, his voice dropping. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to convince Dante to sign over his controlling shares to me. Tell him it's for your safety, that you can't live in this world, whatever story sells. In exchange, I'll let you both walk away. You can have your divorce, your settlement, your little art gallery life. And if I refuse? Leo's smile vanished. Then I'll take what I want anyway, and neither of you will survive the process. At least this way, you both get to live. Marco stepped forward, but Isabella held up a hand. You think Dante will just surrender everything his family built because you threaten us? You don't know your cousin at all. Oh, but I do. I know he blamed himself for Gabriella's death. I know he's been trying to go legitimate to honor his father's secret wishes. And I know he'd burn his entire empire to ash if it meant keeping you alive. Leo headed toward the door. You have 48 hours to convince him. After that, I stop asking nicely. When Marco reported the encounter to Dante, Isabella watched her husband transform. The man who read philosophy and discussed art disappeared, replaced by the Moretti heir who'd maintained control through strategic brilliance and calculated ruthlessness. He won't stop, Dante said, pacing his study. Leo's been positioning himself for this for months. Taking you was supposed to be leverage, but since that failed, he's trying to use you as a wedge to divide my loyalty. Then we give him what he wants, Isabella said. Dante's head snapped up. Absolutely not. Hear me out. He expects you to be predictable, to either fortify your position or lash out violently. What if we do neither? What if we make him think he's won, draw him into the open, and then dismantle him completely? Marco, who'd been silent until now, leaned forward. What are you suggesting? Isabella laid out a plan that made Dante's eyes widen with something that might have been pride. It was risky, potentially catastrophic if it failed, but it played on Leo's arrogance and impatience in ways that just might work. The next day, Dante called a family council, citing urgent business. The 5 families who comprised the city's criminal infrastructure gathered in a neutral location, an upscale restaurant closed for the private meeting. Leo arrived looking triumphant, clearly expecting either surrender or confrontation. What he got was neither. Dante stood before the assembled bosses and announced his intention to transition the Moretti operations toward complete legitimacy over the next 5 years. He presented detailed plans, financial projections, and legal frameworks. He acknowledged that some would see this as weakness, that challenges to his leadership were inevitable. Which is why I'm proposing a restructure, Dante continued. Leo has made his ambitions clear. Rather than engage in a destructive internal conflict, I'm offering him the opportunity to run our remaining traditional operations while I focus on legitimate expansion. A division of responsibility that honors both approaches. Leo's eyes narrowed with suspicion, but the other bosses were nodding. It seemed reasonable, forward-thinking even. The Castellano representative actually applauded the vision. In private afterward, Leo confronted Dante. What game are you playing? No game. You want power. I'm giving you a path to it. Manage the old business, prove yourself capable, and in 5 years when the transition is complete, take it all. I'll be fully legitimate by then, untouchable by old alliances. Dante met his cousin's eyes. Or we can go to war, destroy each other, and let the other families pick our bones clean. Your choice. Leo took the deal. How could he not? It gave him everything he wanted without the risk of open conflict. What Leo didn't know was that Marco had spent the previous 3 months building a comprehensive case against him. Not just family business violations, but genuine crimes that crossed lines even the criminal underworld respected. Human trafficking connections, deals with terrorist organizations, the murder of 3 civilian witnesses to cover up a failed robbery. Isabella's role came next. She'd noticed during gallery events that several of Leo's associates were uncomfortable with his methods, loyal more from fear than respect. She carefully, subtly, began planting doubts, mentioning at social functions how Leo had bragged about the witnesses he'd eliminated, letting slip that he'd called his own men expendable assets in front of her, creating a narrative that Leo saw everyone, including his loyal soldiers, as tools to be discarded. 2 weeks after the council meeting, Leo made his move. Impatient and arrogant, He attempted to accelerate his timeline by orchestrating an attack on Dante's main legitimate holding, a shipping company, planning to frame it as poor management that proved Dante's unfitness to lead. But Dante was ready. He'd anticipated this, had people in place. When Leo's men struck, they were caught on multiple cameras, traced back to Leo through financial records Marco had been meticulously documenting. Dante called another council, this time with evidence. Bank transfers, recorded conversations, testimonies from victims of Leo's trafficking operation. He presented it all without emotion, letting the facts speak for themselves. The council's decision was unanimous. Leo Moretti was exiled, stripped of his name and protection, declared anathema to all 5 families. In their world, it was a death sentence delayed only by the slim chance Leo could flee far enough, fast enough. The confrontation with Leo himself came as he was packing to run. Dante found him in his penthouse, surrounded by half-filled suitcases and shredded documents. "You could have had everything," Leo spat. "The power, the respect, the fear. But you wanted to play businessman, wanted to pretend you're not what you are." "I'm exactly what I am," Dante replied calmly. "My father's son. He built this empire. Yes, but he spent his final years regretting the methods. He wanted transition, wanted legacy that lasted beyond violence and intimidation. I'm giving him that. By destroying me. By stopping you from destroying everything he built. You had chances to work within the structure, to build something. You chose to tear down instead." Dante moved to the door. "You have 6 hours before your exile becomes official. I suggest you use them wisely." "And Isabella?" Leo's voice carried venom. "How long before she ends up like Gabriella? You think going legitimate will protect her? There will always be enemies. Always be someone looking for weakness." Dante paused. "The difference is, I'm not trying to protect her from my world anymore. She's part of it now, understands it, navigates it. That makes her stronger than any distance I could create." In the aftermath, with Leo gone and the family operations shifting toward legitimacy, Dante and Isabella finally had space to breathe. The estate felt different now, less like a gilded cage and more like an actual home. Isabella's paintings began appearing in various rooms. Dante's books migrated to shared spaces. Their separate wings became more symbolic than actual. 3 months after Leo's exile, on a quiet Sunday morning, Dante found Isabella in the garden with a proposal of her own. "I want to renew our vows," she said. "Not the contract, not the arrangement. Real vows, chosen freely by both of us." They held a small ceremony in the estate's garden, just Marco and Lucia as witnesses, the priest who'd married them the first time officiating again. This time, when Isabella walked toward Dante, there was no trembling father to give her away. She walked alone, by choice, toward a future she was choosing. When it came time for vows, Dante took her hands and spoke words he'd clearly been preparing. "You gave me protection when I had nothing. Now I give you something I've never had, a real home, built not on contracts or obligations, but on choosing you every day." Isabella responded, her voice steady and sure. "I choose this life, these complications, this beautiful mess we've made. I choose you, Dante Moretti, every day, for as long as we both shall live." The kiss was different from their first. It was a beginning, not an ending. 6 months later, Isabella's new gallery opened in the Arts District, partially funded by Moretti Investments, but operating independently. Dante had successfully transitioned 60% of the family operations to legitimate enterprises. Victor Romano, sober for the first time in 5 years and working as a consultant for Dante's shipping company, attended the gallery opening with visible pride. Isabella had created a centerpiece for the exhibition, a large oil painting depicting a figure stepping from shadows into light, 1 foot in darkness, 1 in brilliance, captured in the moment of transition. She'd titled it The Vow. The final scene of their story unfolded on an ordinary Tuesday evening. Dante came home from a series of business meetings to find Isabella in their shared study, working on acquisition proposals for the gallery. He loosened his tie, poured 2 glasses of wine, and settled beside her on the sofa. Marco appeared in the doorway with urgent papers requiring signatures, but Dante waved them away. "Tomorrow, Marco. Today I'm just a man with his wife, deciding whether to order Italian or Thai for dinner." Isabella laughed, setting aside her work. "Thai. Definitely Thai. As Dante pulled her close, she thought about the night in her father's study when this had all begun, when Dante had whispered his promise of protection. She'd had no idea then that protection would evolve into partnership, that a business arrangement would become the greatest love of her life. Outside, the city lights began to glow against the darkening sky. Inside, two people who'd been forced together by circumstance chose each other again, freely and completely, building their empire not on fear or obligation, but on the simple, revolutionary act of choosing love in a world that had tried to make them choose survival instead. If you enjoyed The Vow of Shadows, don't let this story end here. Like, comment, and subscribe for more passionate romance stories where love conquers impossible odds. What did you think of Isabella and Dante's journey? Drop your thoughts below, and let me know what kind of romance you'd like to hear next. Your support helps me bring you more captivating stories every week. Until next time, remember, sometimes the greatest love stories begin with the most unlikely arrangements. Asterisk asterisk.